Morning, Jay.
Morning.
Good to be here with you on this Wednesday. It's been a minute or six since we've last been together, do a little back and forth,
I know.
bantering. So, but always good, no matter what.
The beginning of the year was busier than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, but that's a good thing. A lot of good things happening in the Castelli household this year. So that's always good to see. For starting, since I wrote this a little while back, but Kristen had posted this on her Instagram. Even though it's about March, the words that are spoken here really blend in well with what I wanted to talk with you this morning on. And it talks about welcoming in March as a fresh start, clean slate, open invitation to change. March isn't just the start of spring, it's the start of everything we are becoming. It's a reminder that we too can blossom slowly, steadily, and with purpose. This month encourages us to step into our potential, to leave behind what no longer serves us. I think that's important. Leave behind what no longer serves us and to welcome the new with open arms. Let's walk into this chapter with courage, hope, and a sense of wonder for all that's to come. That was very, very appropriate for, like I said, getting into today, because what I wanted to chat with you on was some of what was spoken there, but the idea that at some point during our retirement, our encore phase of life, although not different than any other time in our life, we begin to feel a little lost. We enter retirement very optimistic. Obviously, we think about it as more freedom, more ease, more me time. But then after a period of time, you begin to feel a little lost. Like same old same begins to happen. Again, this should sound very familiar because I think we all go through this in our life. And it's the moment we can begin realizing that, hey, what's all about this retirement? It doesn't feel as enriching as I thought it was going to be. And it's kind of a natural phenomenon for some psychological matters that are involved in this, but we begin to drift. And that's what I wanted to chat with you on, because it also blends in well with some of the, I'll just say, change in your mindset, or let's maybe look at your philosophy on what you're doing with, Santiago and some of the recent podcasts you've had with Aligned Life that you've done with some of your friends. And for those listening in or watching, if you haven't checked out Jay's Aligned Life podcast recently, you should. He's got some wonderful friends and not really deep conversations, but some very appropriate conversations and discussions. And I've noticed that recently, much like this discussion, you've changed a little bit of your mindset of how you're looking at yourself, how you're approaching the business, your growth, and what you want versus the way you were. And I think that's what is important for us to remember when we're in retirement, is that that's going to continue to happen. I think the major change is that in retirement, we lose those anchors that we've had throughout our life. Routines, roles, responsibilities, people will count on us. Those all of a sudden stop. And when they stop, is what I think what I'm seeing is we lose that sense of purpose, identity, but also makes us begin to question whether this phase is really for us. Mm-hmm. And I just want to try to encourage people when we're talking about this today, that that's not a moment to really regress or to regret. It's just a natural mindset that happens when those anchors are lost. The psychologists talk about a what's it called? Prediction gap. Mm-hmm. And it's when throughout our lives we've had the rhythm dictated to us, right? You have your work routine structured around what hours you work during the day, number of hours a week, all of that. You have your period of rest, you have your family responsibilities. All of that's dictated to us. So we don't have that sense of being lost. Mm-hmm. It becomes overwhelming at times, but it doesn't take away our sense of purpose and what we should be doing. When we hit retirement, our encore phase, that stops to a degree. Um, and what I'd like to urge us is to begin to think of this as nothing more than a gentle reset when that happens. I think retirement is a time for us, as I'm beginning to finally, I think light bulb number 3 goes off in my head at this phase of my Encore. We can't start looking at this as a different phase of life. It should become more of a time for us to continue our development in life. We just have an opportunity now to do more of it on our terms and to be maybe a little bit more adventurous. We've talked before in our past discussions and I've written about is that when we're growing up and going through our life, we have a tendency as humans to kind of pause things because of other life events, right? Like if a family is a part of your life, when you have children, you may put some things on hold because you start focusing on your children. Some people can, continue to advance. For me, when that phase came with Mom and I, it was time for me to focus on you and Kristen and Mom at that time and do what was necessary. Not that I did anything different to pause my career. I was just fortunate enough that career steps were happening on their own. But now in this phase of life, that seems empty. And I want to encourage people that emptiness we feel is just a time for us to stop for a moment and reset. Much like I said, you're doing, right? I mean, you talked about reshaping the way you're viewing the people you associate with, how you're looking at your life, your time, the business, right?
I don't view that for me as a reset. I just view it as an evolution, which maybe part of the evolution is a reset. I think for me, when I think about reset is the beginning of starting maybe in a new direction. And so I just look at where I'm at is just a continued evolution of understanding more and more and observing and learning. And that's why, like, even for like the Encore Phase, like we have a vision, we have an idea of what we want and what we're pursuing. There's this, whether it's a vision, or we know what we want, whatever the goals are, we know what they are. We state them, we develop a plan, we go towards them. But those goals will often change between here and whenever they occur. And the reason for that is between here and now and the future, when that goal is going to be achieved in our mind, there are experiences that we can't even fathom that will give us a new data set of information. And with that new information, then maybe the finish line begins to change because now we know something new. So we're doing what we need to do. We're progressing towards that goal, towards that version of ourselves. And then it could be health. It could be meeting a new person that opens your eyes to a new way of thinking, and you go down that path. And now what you thought you wanted is different because with this new information, you now want something different. So I think it's good to have an idea of where you're going. But I also think that you don't want to be too fixated on that, because if you fixate on it being exactly as that is, you may end up getting it, which might sound good, but then when you get it, you realize it's not really what you wanted. And you missed on the opportunities to learn, get the synchronicities, get the lessons from life along that move you in the direction that you're supposed to go. And that kind of conflicts a little bit with like what I've read and what I believe manifestation is all about. Like you got to want it, you got to visualize it, you move towards it, and then you get it. And like the diehard manifestation fans will like to every detail you need to be specific. But I think more about now, I do think it is possible to create the future that we want. But again, I think that it needs to be able to be fluid, because on that journey between A to B of getting there, there will be things that happen that might change what that finish point is. So I think it is today, with all that you have the vision, you have the goal where you're going, but then you don't stay too attached to it so you can move it if you need to. And not moving goalposts, move it. Like a lot of people will move that. Like when I get this, then I'll be happy, and then it keeps on moving out. A lot of times it's money or success within a career. Not moving the end goal because of moving the goalpost, but moving the end goal to stay aligned with what your new authentic self is, what the new authentic life looks like as you get new information. So anyways, the long ramble that doesn't go directly to what you're saying, but I don't view right now me being at a reset. I just view it as an evolution, maybe a little bit more clarity of where the next part of my path is. I think that my reset was back in 2020, 2019. Like my big reset was when I left OnRamp. That was the reset. That was getting rid of something that was cool and it was nice to do and was great to be with Tyrone all the time, and the extra income was nice, but it wasn't really necessary. And like that was the reset, because then I started doing things differently to move forward. And so to me, that's the reset. I wanted to go back though, like you're describing these feelings and these emotions and the uncertainty and the unknown of retirement. And I just want to say it would be really cool if there was somebody out there that was what they were doing now, was to help people maybe before they get to retirement or early in retirement, or when they recognize there's this discontentment, this uncertainty. If there was somebody out there that was helping other people figure those things out, like that would be a great business idea for somebody who was 4 years into retirement that had navigated it some himself and was still, learning and growing, but has this experience and this knowledge and now maybe even a designation, if you will, to be able to help people. And so if you don't get it yet,
how obvious are you getting here,
if you don't understand it yet, because he's never going to promote himself. Like we talked about it last year, but my dad went through a designation, a certificate program to be a retirement coach, retirement life coach. So I say it's very similar to the work that I want to be doing, but the difference being like there's no finance talk in it. It's just really the life planning focused on the transition of retirement. So you've completed that. You've set up your LLC. We're in the process of getting that all set up, and then going to be adding a page to Terry's Thoughts initially. That's kind of like the home page for this business. But if you are listening, or you know somebody who is navigating retirement, getting close to the Encore Phase, and you want to help them not have the struggle, maybe have an easier transition, get ahead of this identity crisis, get ahead of this depression for some people, like he is now doing that work and has the credentials. But truthfully, like you didn't need the credentials. Like it's nice to have that to signal to the world that, hey, this is what I'm doing, to signal to the world that I've put some time in and hours in to learn some things. And I know you learned through it, but the reality of it is you have the greatest teacher who's helped you. And again, that's 4 years of retirement, right?
Yeah.
4 years of retirement, and then the lead up to it of navigating those waters. So you combine the experience with the new knowledge you have from the certificate program, and like you're the best person. And very much about the way I view myself in the work I'm doing, like you don't have the answers for the person. You're the guide to help them figure out what is supposed to be next. What is it? Do they need a reset, or are they just evolving, and what is next? So I did just want to plug, the business isn't quite ready, but I just want to plant the seed. And I know it takes numerous times of telling people, I think it's like 7 times before it ever registers. So more and more we need to talk about it. But if you're in that space and you need the help finding clarity, your guy's right here.
Well, I appreciate that plug very much so. Even though that wasn't planned in this in any way, but it worked out well. Thank you for that. But it does, that whole idea about securing the designation to give some credibility between an individual and what the service happens to be. But I'm finding that truly is something that's going to be valuable for people to become comfortable with the Encore Phase, mainly because I think most of us, and we've talked about this too, like have a vision of what retirement's going to be like, generally based off of our own experience with either our parents, grandparents, family members, what you've been told. And so looking at a 60 plus something back when I was 40, I had an idea what I would have liked this time in my life to be. It was a little bit more than I would have thought, mainly because, again, as we spoke, coming from the life I did from our little town back in Midland, Pennsylvania, the steel town, everybody worked until they could hit retirement age, and then they just did what they did, which was not a whole lot, because they were They were very comfortable individuals, happy to just be not working anymore and doing what they did, which was their entire life anyways, was working around the house. Grandfathers, uncles all worked, had their gardens come, spring through fall, maybe doing some fishing. Your Pap Denise's dad, he golfed a lot because he was a golfer. But they didn't go off on elaborate vacations or touring the world or deciding to do anything different because that was their life.
Mm-hmm.
So my vision of retirement was not so much just settling into doing not a whole lot, but it was based off of retirement wasn't supposed to be anything more than a time to just sit back, relax, and not worry about anything based on that. I added to that experience the idea of understanding a little bit more, just if you would, growing up here in Indianapolis versus growing up back in the valley in Pennsylvania, of there is more available to us at this time, and we shouldn't just stop. Of course, being around, you and Kristen and individuals that both you associate with, you see some other things, to your point about learning.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the drive of today's discussion, is that this time of life isn't just a time to just settle. It's a time to get, if you would, kind of fired back up about yourself and your life.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we spoke before, we could have another 25, 30 years ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're fortunate enough to be blessed with good health, we'll be healthy well into our 80s and maybe even 90s. And, just sitting around the house doing nothing is when you start to deteriorate.
Yeah, that's when you don't make it to 80 to 90.
That's when you don't make it to 80 or 90. So being a little bit more of yourself, being something you maybe always wanted to be, is a good time of your life to do that now.
And I think for your generation, that's perfect, because stereotypically, your generation, like, you weren't told to think outside the box. Meaning, you described what you saw in Midland. That's what everybody did. That was what life was supposed to look like. No one told you that hey, there's a whole big world outside of Midland. You can go do something else. You don't have to do what your dad did and your grandfather did and stay here and live that life. Like, if you want that, great. But I don't think you guys were encouraged to follow your passions, to, go find the authentic version of yourself and live that. So I think that there's a lot of people in your generation that if they were to answer Kinder's 3 questions, the last one being, what did you not get to do? Who did you not get to become? What was left undone? Or they read Bronnie Ware's 5 Regrets of the Dying, and the number one is, I didn't get to be more true to myself. If they sat with those questions and answered it and looked back over their life, they may not wish for another life, but I'm willing to bet there were things they would have loved to do, but they didn't know they could do it.
Right.
And I think maybe even a lot of people don't even know. Like, they just never even thought about it. Like, this is what I do. I'm like, this is the path I was sent down. It's safe. It's comfortable. It's predictable. I'm just going to stay on this and just live my life and be thankful. And I don't know, maybe they're better off not asking, because then they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
But I just think that heading into the Encore phase, or being in it, is an opportunity. I do think it's an opportunity for a reset. I think it's a great way to think about it. Reset, and with the time you have left, be the person you wish you always could have been. Right. And hopefully the nice thing about it is you can go pursue that without a lot of pressure, because hopefully you've prepared, and financially you're in a good enough shape that you could retire, and maybe your goal of retirement was not having to work and living. So if there's not the pressure to have to go make money, then why not start a business as a retirement life coach helping retirees? Because if you don't get anybody, you're no worse off. You weren't banking on that money to be a part of your plan. And right. What I've noticed is when you are detached from the money, meaning you're not attached to doing something to get the money because you need it, when you just get to do it because you want to do it, then you make even more money, because it's not about the money. And then you're doing good work from a good space, which I'm working on a book about money being energy. Like, energetically, that attracts more money to you. So when you can do something not because of the money, you find yourself in a situation where more money finds you, and you're more successful. So I think it's the perfect time to reset, and it's the perfect time to do the thing you always wanted to do. And if it makes money, awesome. And if it doesn't, hopefully you didn't need it. So that's fine. There's no pressure to it. You don't have to worry about where's the next dollar going to come from, versus if you tried to do this, 30 years ago, there's a little bit more pressure, and it makes it harder. And, then the fears of money and the need for money changes how you operate, changes the stress level you're operating from, which changes how you impact people and makes it harder. So if you're in the encore phase, there's no reason not to do the thing you've always wanted to do. And I think there's also no reason not to explore what's the thing I wish I always did, and then just go do it.
Go do it. Yeah. Or if you would, or not do it. There's a lot of value in stating that as well to those who are listening in at this phase of the life. Or even as we've talked, this could be applicable to your other decades in life as well. But, also deciding that I don't have to do it is critical. But I think it's worth just pursuing for no other reason than to stay in I'm just going to call it a perpetual state of resetting. Because as you mentioned, as we go through life in general, things happen, right? I mean, life happens. Good, bad, indifferent, ugly. And each of those incidents, when life happens, takes us a different thought process, which may take us a different way for maybe a period of time, and then something happens. It's just that when we are younger, once we go through those little life happening moments, we get through them, we're right back at it, but we have this this block holding us back that we're tethered to, and that is work. Mm-hmm. So once we get through our moment in life, then we got to get back to work because we need to at that time. And that's the point that here in this phase, we don't have those anchors. So this moment of feeling that it's not enriching, that I'm feeling maybe useless, restless, or just oddly flat, people just need to understand that that's okay to feel that way. Mm-hmm. It's not anything more than it was when we were 30, 40, 50, or even in our early 60s. It's just a moment that you now have the time to say to yourself, hey, what's important to me? Mm-hmm. What do I want more of? What do I want less of? It's kind of like thinking, each year, I don't make New Year's resolutions, but let's just use that as our moment here. It's like making a New Year's resolution that I'm going to eat better, exercise more, give this up, add this to my life, whatever those might be. We start in January with a clean slate. Here we are in March, but just a few months into it, I forget reading where they say just 3 months into the new year, people that make resolutions, about 80% of people already are well off their mark and never meet it.
It's like 3 weeks into the year.
It doesn't take much time to do it. The point here is that if that happens, just like if we make those resolutions, we should stop and say to ourselves, let's get back on track. It's nothing more than saying, let's get back on track. And the same could be said of if you're in this phase of life and you're feeling oddly flat or it's becoming the same old same. I think most of the time what that is we're falling back to old habits. I'm very guilty of that. I've spoken to that in the past. My biggest, challenge is that I always fall back into my old habits of either thinking too much or analyzing what I need to do and get through it all. I'm getting better at not doing that, and I think that's what we need to understand about this phase too, is that you need to take a reset. You need to stop for a moment, think about how I need to recalibrate myself and what's important at this time, because it's different than previous decades. Mm-hmm. As you said, we have the opportunity to just be who we want to be. And maybe that's part of the challenge as we're talking this morning. Maybe we really don't know what we want to be when we grow up. And that's okay, because we just need to just continue to keep ourselves motivated without falling into old traps of blaming life or blaming myself or just feeling comfortable just sitting around. And for some people, that's okay. I mean, I've talked to a couple of folks where they've recently retired and they've said, this is great. I'm finally where I'm at. I'm going to really fit in perfectly where I'm just not going to do anything. Mm-hmm. And I know they'll be okay with that because that's the kind of person that they happen to be, and that's okay.
I would argue that part of the reason they're okay doing nothing is because they aren't going to be okay doing nothing, but they don't. If they knew what they really wanted to do, then they would want to do it. We're not meant to do nothing. Like doing nothing is not growing, and we're meant to grow. It doesn't mean you have to be doing 40 hours, but like doing nothing is not why we're here. Like we're here to learn and grow and experience, and not like I think that a great cue of do you need a reset is like comfort. So I have a podcast that should be coming out in a couple weeks with my buddy Ohan, and we talked about contentment versus comfortability, like being comfortable. And I think being comfortable is dangerous because to me, and you can define it however you want, but my definition of comfortable, how I think about it is like when you're comfortable, you begin to quit growing. You don't want to leave that spot. Like think about being on the couch on a rainy fall day that's cold under a blanket. You're comfortable. You don't want to get up. You don't want to go work out. You want to go outside. Like you're nice and warm and comfortable. You don't want to get up. And if you stayed there forever, you would just rot away. And contentment, to me, I think they could be confused, but contentment means like being at peace and being happy with where you're at, but also you're not staying in that comfort. Like you can continue to grow while being content. So content to me is being happy with what you have, having what you need, being at peace with what you have, but also allows you to continue to grow and evolve. And so like you mentioned comfort, being comfortable or comfort a little bit ago, and I think people want to be comfortable, but in comfortable, you stop growing. And when you're comfortable, you don't learn anything new. Like the greatest teacher is discomfort. So I'm not by any means suggesting that you go out and give yourself a big tragedy to overcome or seek suffering. But also I think that if you find yourself being too comfortable, then you need to shake something up. You need to have a little bit of a reset and make sure that you don't stay comfortable, because I think that's when you get complacent. And even in this like navigating the world today, like if you get too comfortable from a technology standpoint, you're not going to be able to operate in the world in the next 10 years if you stay comfortable with the way you know things are today and don't continue to grow and learn with the advancements of technology. Like you get left behind. And that's just technology.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very, very true. What will be interesting on that point of as we watch the evolution of this technology versus the evolution of the technology that came about 20 years ago, there's a vast difference between becoming comfortable or learning what we had to learn 20 years ago versus learning what we do now, because now the technology is so advanced that all you have to do is just type in a few words, and then it brings up everything that you need.
Yes, it does. You do type in what you want, but you also have to be comfortable with understanding like the way that you're doing things in the future is going to look different. So, you hear a lot about AI displacing jobs, and it will. I think that in every profession, the best will always be around because as a human being, they provide value that people are willing to pay for. But if we were to think of like a travel agent, the best travel agent will still have people want to work with them, and people will pay a premium because of the little things that they do that technology won't be able to do. But for everybody else who might have been used to booking through a travel agent, there's not enough travel agent, or they can't afford or aren't willing to pay what a travel agent charges in the future. They've got to get comfortable with booking it through an AI agent and letting the agent go and do the shopping. Like it will be a different, like I think that stereotypically older generations don't like change. So even though it is just typing in what you want, the change of I always done it this way, this is technology, I don't want to learn it, I don't want to do this, leaves them in a situation. And that's just a stereotype. Not everybody's that way, obviously, but that's like you're going to have to understand how to navigate and use the technology. Even if it's easy to use, you have to get comfortable doing it. And that may mean you have to get comfortable linking your bank account up to a website, which maybe you've never felt comfortable with that because someone could steal my information. Neglecting the fact that someone could steal your check out of the mail and have everything that they need. And I've always been able to do that. Or the fact that your information has already been stolen time over time and it's already out there. So I just think comfort is a big risk, especially in the Encore phase.
Yeah, and I believe that's key to our moment and discussion this morning. The moment being where you might be in your Encore phase. is the fact that it will be different, because just like the first or second evolution of technology, they talked about replacing jobs. I remember that well in my position of using technology to advance, operations and efficiencies in companies. That's what they always talked about, the replacement of jobs. But it was then couched to be, well, you would just take the mundane work that everybody had to do, and that was being the technology, and you were able to enhance the person individually, give them more training and elevate their position. And that was a storyline then. Very similar storyline now. And I think what we'll see is, obviously the younger generation won't have any difficulties with it, because I will just say this, being the old man that I am, the younger generation don't necessarily cherish the relationship or wanting to talk with people.
But
versus the older generation cherishes more relationship.
I think that is wrong, because I think that what we're seeing is the pendulum swing back to everybody, but especially the younger generation valuing human connection. Like, because
I haven't seen that yet.
Oh yeah, it's
when I read a statistic the other day that the 20-something.
That's why they're all miserable. That's why they're all depressed.
And that's the point.
But they're starting. People are looking for community. Like, it started with online communities, but now those are not meeting people's needs. That's why you're seeing a lot of like meetups happening. Like, people are craving community. Market. Let's come back to this podcast, and I'm not the only person who has said this. However, this is an original thought that like generated in my mind that I brought up a couple years ago. So I think that people are craving human connection. They want to communicate with people and like-minded people. So like, what am I doing? I'm organizing yoga in the park this spring. I'm organizing a ruck club, so walking with weight, getting people like local community, and then tying into these events like Aligned Life and Authentic Life type conversations. So it'll be like-minded people getting together. Like, I think, and those will be done with no business aspects of it. Like, it's just creating community of like-minded people and then seeing what happens. But the reason I think the younger generation will be impacted more by the technology initially than the older generation is, right now companies are wanting to use that technology to replace the entry-level jobs. So they're going to be graduating without experience, but the first job that they're actually going to be able to get hired into is going to require experience. So how do I get the experience for the job if I don't have the job, type of thing? But what I think always happens with these revolutions when it comes to technology, whether it's the industrial or the paper mill and all that stuff, is yes, there are jobs that are displaced. But just like between now and the future of my authentic life, there are things that we don't know are possible because of this new technology. So new jobs will be created to replace some of the old. But then also, the technology makes a level playing field for way more people. Like, I have friends that are building amazing little side businesses off of Claude. So they type in what they want. Claude generates the code that they need. They take the code and they put it in the platform, and they are building viable businesses that will end up being multi-six-figure businesses. So, like, because of the technology, they could do something they never did before. And while I don't know if it's the age of entrepreneurship, and I don't know if everybody needs to be a business owner or an entrepreneur, but more people are going to be able to create other income streams with their ideas that are solving a problem that they have, that obviously other people are going to have, and now they can easily create it, stand up a small business, and be able to create income. So maybe the job, like the career of the future, is you have a full-time job, or maybe a high part-time job, 30 hours a week or something, doing something, and then you have your other small business. So you have two income streams or multiple income streams that get you to the income level that traditionally you would have had in a regular 9-to-5 corporate career. So it will be uncomfortable for many, but I think the people who survive, whether that is using the technology and evolving with it or on the career side of it, are the people who are forward thinking and see the opportunity that exists rather than playing the victim and wanting to be taken care of because their job got replaced by technology. It sucks, but you have a choice at that point. Do you cry over spilt milk? Or do you feel the emotions, be mad, be sad, process all of that, let go of those emotions, and then figure out what's next?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of our society wants to play the victim. And that's what they're told. They are the victim rather than this is a change and it's a new opportunity. And with that opportunity, it doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't, and it's not always fair. And like I may be overly optimistic that what I do, I don't think technology will ever touch me.
Right.
But I could be wrong.
Yeah.
No,
No,
but I
it
can promise
can't.
you this: if they ever do displace me, I'm not gonna not pivot and do something else.
Right. No, I don't think that it will, because we've gone a little deeper into this rabbit hole than I intended to, but that's okay. This conversation we're having is no different than the way things develop. I'll just say the first time around with technology that came available at the desktop, and the power of, of what was available to allow people to become more than they were, or positions being eliminated or reduced, and advancing training and elevating people to higher roles rather than just being a typist or a mathematician, and do more of that, take away the manual work to employ the benefits of the quality of the individual and their intelligence. My point I wanted to make on the whole relationship piece was, just as in this phase of life, what I was trying to illustrate was, at the present time, the younger generation I'm speaking to are, the 20, 30 somethings who have very little social contact today, because that's how they've grown up. Mm-hmm. This thing's, tethered to them. That they come in and meet people, and all everybody's doing. I've talked about this before. When technology first became available on the phone, where traveling and being in a coffee shop waiting on a flight and seeing everybody in this little coffee shop thinking, man, where's everybody going? Some people are on the phone, on their laptop, probably, talking to somebody in another part of the world. That was wonderful. But the idea was, you're in this coffee shop and ain't a damn person talking to one another. Mm-hmm. There's a comfort level there where some people are more comfortable through this than they are face to face, as you and I are. So that was my point, where as this AI unfolds, it certainly will have an impact on our lives in the future, because it can't help but do so. How you settle in. But I'm much like you. I've always been a strong believer in a relationship, in person to person. Mm-hmm. I've purposely not adopted to some technology or done it simply because I don't want to, because I would much rather have the personal contact of dealing with somebody and going through a simple transaction. Sure, the convenience is there if I need it, but it's, as you said, we're humans. We crave, we crave contact. I mean, that's part of who we are as a human. We crave that contact. We're social beings. As we move forward and bring us back on track, in this phase of life, we lose a lot of that, right? I mean, we're not going to work, so that whole social network is removed from us. That anchor is gone, and where you got to find it. And so that's what I'm saying is, where we're at now, why the need for the reset is, it's not about trying to, replace everything that has been removed from you. It's an idea. You have an opportunity now to find the right people. Mm-hmm. You've talked about this several times in various. You've had your friends in podcasts, you've written about it in your notes. We've talked about it as well, is that when we're working, we have a lot of colleagues, friends, associates, but when we find out that a lot of those are just situational relationships, they were what they were at that time. I mean, you've even talked about this recently, where those that you first had were very dear to you. Now, life is where it's at, so many years have passed, and that relationship is just not as it once was. Mm-hmm. That's where we're at here, and why sometimes in this phase I'm telling you that people just have to become comfortable with understanding that, hey, someone or somebodies that you once thought were extremely important to you, find out now that they're not. They were only important at that point in time. Mm-hmm. So part of the reset is to understand that. And as you said, we weren't giving any manual of what it was like to retire. We're based on what we knew, what we were told, what we saw. Here's our chance to rewrite that, and we got to have some of the questions that we need when we recalibrate ourselves at this point in time, is to say, what really is important to us? Mm-hmm. What do I want more of? What do I want less of? So those are the times to do the resets. And they'll come to you naturally, because I think, as I have felt, now, this 4 short years, but damn, it's 4 years. I felt moments over these 4 years of same old same. Is this really going to work out? And I have to appreciate that those were just natural moments, right? They're just natural moments in our life where you pause and talk about that. Prior years, decades, you didn't have the time to really dwell on it because you were, forced to do something else. That routine was there. That rhythm was imposed upon you. Now we don't have a rhythm. But I think it's important for us to somehow find a new rhythm and recognize that rhythm should change over this time in life, because we can. We can accept whatever that rhythm is versus just go with it, be done with it, dismiss it, and go on and go back to our old habits. At least I'm speaking for myself, right? You have a moment in life, you get through it, and instead of learning from it, maybe you just go back to what's comfortable, right? You go back to what's comfortable because you have a family, you have a mortgage, you have whatever you got to do, kids putting through college, whatever that may be. So you do those things, but I think it's important to you to take a step back and relax, because there's joy in taking a step back and relaxing. Take a moment to take that all in and recognize the importance of just admiring the fact that the morning is yours to have, and you can sit down a little longer in the morning to enjoy if you would, the morning hours before, because you're not rushed into meeting, a meeting or a conference call. You've got to remember that I think the energy level shifts, and you got to have the opportunity to examine that energy level of what brings you that positive energy. Is it people? Is it places? Is it things? I think it's important to recognize what brings you your energy now should be you. What's the energy you now want to have and project outward? It's yours to decide, not anybody else. And I think I'm beginning to see that's more important now. It's my energy to give forward. Maybe I've been doing it all my life and never recognized it, but I'm recognizing it now, that it just feels better when I'm at a certain energy level, and that's important. And it doesn't take much, I think, to do the general reset either. I'm not proposing that you need to make this, a routine, but it, certainly becomes important to do. But I think it's just little things like, taking a daily walk or an evening walk after dinner. The journaling, I'm finding is important to do. I've never really done that much in my life. I'm doing a little bit more of that now. Throughout my life, I did have a notebook that I wrote specific thoughts I had when working. Most of it was more business-related thoughts on, what I just experienced, what I just resolved, what I solved. So it was more business-focused rather than personal. Now what I'm writing from time to time, it's still not like a daily journaling, so I'm not like you and others who journal every day, but I do write down certain thoughts that are upon me these days, and they are more personal thoughts. So I've got a separate notebook that I use for that. I haven't written much in the prior one that I did when I was working, because I just said was more work related theories and solutions. I think it's going to become important too in the reset that you really identify the people that mean a lot to you. I mean, we've always done that, but again, I think it becomes even more critical in this phase of life that the reset include who are the right people to be around. You addressed in several of your podcasts in the past about identifying the right people that lift you up and have the high energy, and those that don't, no longer, like the statement we read at the beginning of the podcast here, like March says, it's it's a time to lift up and move forward, and we should have those kind of people around us. And sometimes that means getting rid of your association with people that you've known for a long time, only to find out that they're really not that critical to you. So trying to wrap a little bit is up, just trying to watch our time here so we don't lose a lot of folks. This time in our life should be more about thriving, our energy, our willingness to accept that, hey, this is going to be different than maybe we even ever thought. And that's a good thing for many reasons, and they will be different for everybody. And it's an opportunity for you to just really sit down and examine what life is more about for you, because now you probably are at a point in time where your children are grown, they have their own families, the families are growing like weeds and at different points in time. Just seeing the little video that you posted, Ange and Rome and Ange pulling up in the driveway with Rome's driving,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
We're already here. He's driving. The oldest is driving. So it's a time, I think, to appreciate that and recognize that that's our reset. Realizing our families are at a very good point in their life, hopefully, and they've not been hit with much, that's impacting their lives greatly, other than just normal things. It's a time for us to strike that rhythm, and I want to urge you all to strike a different rhythm that you've ever done in your past before, because there's probably something inside of you that's trying to tell you to relax and enjoy where you're going to be 10 years from now. Even if you're 60 something, 10 years from now, being in your mid 70s is really not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly not the 70s of like when my grandparents were 70s,
Mm-hmm.
although they all lived another 20 years from their 70s. So that didn't mean much. It's like, so back to your point, we only know what we know,
Mm-hmm.
right? And for me, we've had the blessings of our family living well into their late 80s, 90s, and healthy until their last days. So we never were plagued with thinking that, I can't do something when I'm 80, because all of our ancestors, lived well in there and were doing things. Many of them living in their own homes at that point. So I think that's what I wanted to discuss today, was just the need at this point in time, even if you're just a few months into your Encore or years into your Encore, if you're feeling a little uneasy, if you're feeling a little flat, don't be concerned. That's maybe the little sign to nudge you a little bit to do this gentle reset that we've talked about today. And in doing so, just examine that you yourself owe it, not to yourself, but to yourself 10 years from now, to enjoy what's there. Because if you don't, like you said, those who have been asked the things that they regret is just that they weren't more of who they were, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important. So I think that's where I wanted to wrap up, is just keep that thought process, reset when you can, and just remember to never quit searching, never settle, and never give up seeking that greater purpose. And the greater purpose is our happiness.
Mm-hmm.
So Jay, as always, thanks for the time today. Always good.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time around.
All right.
Maybe not 6 months from now.